and welcome to 9 to 42, the podcast from the team at the Guitar Show UK. Join us for interviews, updates and chat with artists, influencers and those that manufacture the gear that we love. Hello and welcome to 9 to 42, the podcast from the guys at the Guitar Show UK. I am looking at Sir Jason Hunt on screen. How are you, Jace? Are you well?
I'm all right, Ant. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Very well. And we have a little surprise for you coming up in the fact that we've just Googled something. We've done a late piece of homework, but we'll come to that. We'll come to that shortly. Now, if you were listening to the last episode where we chatted to Ainsley Lister, you'll know who we're about to speak to today, because we're going to speak to Chris from Rift Amps. And Chris, you should have been here last time, shouldn't you?
I should have been here a couple of times ago, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
It's been hard work getting you here.
Well, I'm just avoiding Jason, if I'm honest with you.
Okay. Sensible is about the only thing I can say to that.
I still owe Jason for 3 Naan breads from the Guitar Show.
Right.
And I know he wants to collect, so I'm just I've been hiding from him.
I have to ask, a number of meals or the same meal?
Well, as you know, on the Saturday evening, Jason takes us out for a curry, and you get a choice of rice or naan bread, and we wanted both, so I ordered extra and put it on his tab.
Right.
This is true.
Although Phil X did steal one of my naan breads, so he owes you for 1, and I owe you for 2.
I think I might let Phil X off. You, on the other hand.
Oh, well, if you needed to know where you fit in the world, Chris, then you've just found out.
Yep. You should have seen the look on my face when he stole that naan bread.
But it is Phil X, and he was really good fun. And bless him, he just got off the
Oh,
plane
it was brilliant.
that day.
I was going to say, he flew all the way from LA to come to a curry house.
I know, and I like to take all of my American artists that have flown halfway across the world for a Birmingham curry the day they arrive.
Yeah. That glamorous location, isn't it? The what do you call it? The Balti Triangle.
The Balti Triangle, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to ask, what flavour naan bread?
Oh, I can't remember.
I've got a spreadsheet somewhere.
Yeah,
You've
it's
got a
on your
naan
spreadsheet.
I've got
This
curry,
man takes his curry very seriously.
This curry club started about 5-6 years ago. I'd got a load of exhibitors at the event who were one-man bands, effectively, who I realised were going to be sat in a hotel room in a city they don't live in, on their own, on the Saturday night. And I was like, that's not really fair, is it? Why don't we go for a curry? And the first year, I made a massive mistake. So I hadn't said to anybody, I decided that I was going to pay. But there were so many of us that the orders took about 2 hours to come. And that means people drink more. So whilst the curry actually only cost me about 150 quid, the beer cost me about 450 quid. So now I go to an unlicensed curry house and let people make their minds up as to whether they wish to consume that much alcohol. But also to avoid any issues with people having to wait 2 hours for a meal, I get orders off everybody before the night on a spreadsheet, send it to the curry house so they know at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night they've got to make these 40 curries. Because what went from being sort of like about 8 of us going out is now about 40 of us going out. And it's the unofficial Guitar Show Curry Club.
Jace, do you know what? And I feel responsible for asking about what naan bread Phil X had nicked, but that possibly could be the dullest intro to one of our podcasts in all the time we've been doing it. And you know, obviously, I've got a lot of time and respect and love for you, but that really was...
I'm sorry.
We better get on to our guest, haven't we, really?
Can't you just spin it that I really look after my exhibitors?
Yeah, well, no, I think that's a given. But that was just a little.
Yeah, all right. So there's a spreadsheet. All right, we cover it.
Right, there's a spreadsheet. Yeah, that's fine. Anyway.
I think I've got a photo of it on my phone, actually.
Oh, God.
I think it's a plain Naan. I think it's just a plain Naan.
Right, okay. That's actually a little disappointing, actually.
Yeah.
Really. Did he not sign it with the Sharpie?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
There it is, yeah.
There's me, Mick Taylor, and Phil X.
Yeah, and a plain Naan.
And
And my Naan. Yeah.
And a stray bottle of Dr. Pepper. Right. So, Chris, it's a pleasure to finally have you here.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Having not managed it a couple of times before. Jace, you were the man with the questions, aren't you? So I'm gonna segue to you and let you kick in.
Yeah, I've got several things written down. I wanted to start with the fact that your name is Christopher Fantana, which
It's
is
not. It's Christov.
Is it Christoph?
Yeah, it's too many F's in the middle otherwise. So I removed the second one.
What an amazing name!
Yeah, Christov Fantana. It's one F in the middle, as you say it. Otherwise, it's Christopher Fantana, and there's two F's. And it annoys me, so I removed it.
By deed poll, or you just removed it?
By Depot, yeah.
Wow!
Yeah, I know.
Where's the name from?
It's an old family surname.
Well, they usually are, but
Yeah. But it died out. It married out, I guess, about 5 or 6 generations ago. And when my parents divorced, there was a bit of an about, because my mum wanted to change back to her original surname, and my dad and it got a bit feisty, and so I picked another one instead.
amazing. I'm so glad I asked that question now.
Yeah, absolutely sitting on the fence, I think it's that.
So what were you christened then?
Christopher.
But the surname obviously would have been different.
Was Wilson.
Right.
Yeah, it all got a bit. I don't want to say petty, but I guess that's the right word.
Right.
And I thought, I'm not picking sides. I'm gonna. You see, my mum's really into genealogy, so she's got a huge family tree up on the wall in her house, and there's this husband and wife called Fantana, and they had a daughter, and then obviously when she married, the name got lost. But it's about 5 or 6 generations old.
My dad did our family tree.
Yeah.
And he did it really quickly. And he went back about 350, 400 years. But he did it in like an afternoon. Because apparently my forefathers only ever lived on about 3 roads in one part of Birmingham. So it was really easy to just keep going back through the church records. And I said, "Is there any money, Dad?" And he went, "No, son, we've always been peasants."
So
there we are.
You really aren't Le Grand Fromage, are you?
No, mate, I'm from Birmingham.
Right. Okay. Well, there we have it.
Anyway, yes. So it's I'm actually Christov Fantana now.
Christoph Fantana.
I'm still Chris. I've always been Chris.
No, I'm changing everything that I've got now with your name on it, my address book and everything, to Christoph. That's amazing.
That is the most rock and roll name we've had so far of guests, isn't it?
The annoying thing is, though, is people say Fantana like Carlos Santana. And my lovely girlfriend, bless her, reminds me that if you think spanner, you'll pronounce it correctly. I don't know what she means by that. But
Christoph sounds like Spanner.
No, Fantana and Spanner. Yeah,
I like that. I shall not forget that in a hurry now. Christoph sounds like Spanner.
So, anyway, I suppose the first thing that is, what's the history of Rift?
How far do you want to go back?
Well, we've got all evening, you said, so...
Yeah. So I used to... I've always tinkered with amps and guitar electronics and bits and bobs. Mainly out of necessity, because the local guitar shop charged a fortune for repairs. I've told this story before, but I had a solid state Marshall and it needed a volume pot replacing, and they quoted 120 quid.
Wow.
Yeah, because what they'd do is they'd send it off to a bloke who would then obviously quote for it. They'd then put their bit on top plus VAT. So by the time it came back to you, it would be ridiculous. And my old man said, "No, we're not paying that. We're going to work out how to do it ourselves." And so I learned how to replace switches in Les Pauls and volume pots in amps and pick up swaps and all that stuff. And so I learned out of necessity. And I built some kits and stuff for mates, and like 18-watt Marshall kits and stuff like that. And then in 2008, April 2008, I was made redundant from a teaching job that I had. And I took the money and I went, right, we're going to do Rift full time. See if I can make that work. So I started building out of what is actually a laundry cupboard in our house. It's 1 metre by 1.2, and I just about managed to squeeze a desk into there and a chair. We got rid of the tumble dryer that was in there, and that was my workshop for a couple of years, because I could lock myself away in there and just be away creating and designing and building and doing all sorts. And so that's really the very early origins of what is Rift today. Is me building in a cupboard in the house.
So, what were you a teacher of?
I was a music teacher.
Oh right, okay. In like secondary school or?
Well, both. I was a travelling. I mean, the correct term is peripatetic.
I think is the word.
Yeah. But no one could spell that, so we always said travelling, which is very ironic for teachers.
Not music teachers.
And I used to go around the primary schools and secondary schools teaching guitar. And then by some lovely loophole in education law at the time, I could do something called PPA cover, which allowed me to teach classroom music in primary schools. So that was another string to the bow, and I did that for quite a few years. Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and
yeah, my daughter
showing kids how to play the triangle,
SpongeBob SquarePants on the guitar.
Oh yeah, all sorts of stuff like that. Yeah, Three Blind Mice. Yeah. That's the thing. I had to do recorder lessons with the Year 3 classes. That was on the curriculum, and I don't play the recorder, but I had to teach it. It was hilarious, but it was such a good time. But I then took a job at a private school teaching, and then when everyone started doing academies. Do you remember when all the schools started becoming these academies, and there was mergers, and then it was last one in, first one out, and I went, "Yep, I'll take the money. I'm off." And there we go. Yeah.
So Rift. So did you have a plan when you set it up?
No, of course I didn't. All the best ideas, they're never planned. I knew that that's what I wanted to do, but I had no idea how to start manufacturing guitar amplifiers. I didn't know where to get a steady supply of components from. I didn't know whether I was going to build the cabinets myself or have someone else. I had no idea. But I'm one of these people that works stuff out as I go along. The only thing I did know was what I wanted to call the business, which was Rift. Because you've probably got it, Jason. It's the Beauty of the Burst coffee table book. Have you got it?
Well, I've got this. The Beauty. Is that the one that I've got 5 volumes of?
Probably.
Is that
it's the one that's got all the 58, 59 and 60 Les Pauls in.
I've got so many books on the the Burst.
And one of the guitars in there, it said it's got a Rift sawn top, maple top. It's a 59. I think it's page 68 or 78. I'll look it up. And I didn't know what Rift sawn meant, because I knew about quarter sawn maple and I knew about flat sawn maple. But this one had a Rift sawn top. And it was also an unburst, so a lot of the red had faded and it had just gone the yellows and oranges. And I looked up what Rift sawn meant, and it's literally halfway between quarter sawn, which is cut at a 90-degree angle to the grain, and then flat sawn, which is across it. It's kind of cut on somewhere between 30 and 60 degrees, they say. And what you get is the grain running north to south, as you'd expect, but it's kind of wavy. It's not perfectly straight.
Yeah.
And then the flame in the middle is strong, and then it kind of disappears under the grain and then appears again at the edge.
Oh, right.
So you get this really beautiful, natural-looking book match top when it's rift sawn. And it doesn't look like it's been printed on a computer either, like some of the guitar manufacturers do these days. And I thought that's really cool. It's kind of halfway between something or other, and it's doing its own thing, marching to the beat of a different drum, that sort of thing. And that's what I wanted to call Rift. And crucially, it was just a single-syllable word, because I thought if the brand ever gets huge, I want people to say I play a single-syllable word brand. I play a Rift.
Yeah.
You know, I play a da 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 by da 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 da. You know, I just wanted it to be a nice, catchy thing, and Rift seemed to fit. And it's a proper guitar word. You know,
it's a proper guitar word. Is the plan eventually to build the company up so much you can go and buy that 5960 Les Paul with a Rift top?
Well, I mean, that's the dream, but if I've actually had a guitar made with a Rift sawn maple top.
Was that the Rider?
That's the Rider. So I'd saved up enough money, and I got some inheritance, and I thought, right, I want to get a nice Les Paul made for me, but I want it to have a Rift sawn top. And do you know what? You can't buy them anywhere.
No.
You go to it, and they go, oh no, because it's too expensive to cut wood that way these days. And you just can't find them. And I rang around all the famous guitar builders. None of them had any Rift sawn maple tops in stock, or had access to them. And then I was talking to a local guitarist. He said, "Oh no, I think this chap's got one. He lives around the corner from you." So I went round there, and he had 5 or 6 of the most beautiful Rift sawn tops. And he said, no one ever wants them because they're not quarter sawn. So I've had them for years and years, 20, 30 years old, and I've never been able to do anything with them. And I saw it, and I went, that's the one. That's the one. And I gave him a deposit there and then. Shall I get it?
Yeah,
It's on the wall.
Get it.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm showing you, because this is a podcast.
It is a podcast, but you know. Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That is something else.
Yeah. But yeah, you kind of got straight grain in the middle, flat sawn there, and back out to a Rift again.
Yeah, I feel like stay there.
That's a set of Monty's paths in there. Yeah.
Let me take a picture, and then we can at least show people.
I'm trying to get the glare out of the way.
There you go.
But yeah, it's got a set of Monty's paths in there. Our good friend Matt Gleason.
Yes, my Les Paul has Monty's Paths in it as well.
That's the thing. I had this set of raw nickel covers in my parts drawer for years, and I was messing around with methods of aging them, and I'd left them out in the garden for a winter. Because I thought that's the most
process,
the most authentic aging. Oh, yeah, it does. That's the thing. It's brilliant. And when I brought them in the spring, they were just exactly what I wanted. And all I'd done is left them on a bird table in the garden for a winter. And they looked bang on like the pickup covers from this guitar in the beauty of the burst. And so I rang up Matt Gleason. I said, would you mind terribly building a set of paths for the guitar using these covers? And of course, you know, Matt, he can't do enough to say yes. So he did, but I said, whatever you do, don't tell me what colour bobbins you put inside, because I don't want to know. And then in 50, 60 years' time, when I eventually take the covers off, I'll find out how he made them and what colour he chose. So I don't know what colour the bobbins are in those pickups. They might be double whites, so they could be zebras.
Or blacks.
Does he do double blacks now?
I have no idea.
Yeah. It's really nerdy and really sad, but that's the type of stuff that goes through my head. Can I garden age a set of pickup covers?
So you start Rift, and so what were the first amps that you were selling then?
So I actually put my clever hat on at that point, because obviously you want to sell you want to do your own designs, your own line of things, but if you're realistic, they're probably not going to sell because nobody knows who you are. I haven't got the marketing budget behind me, and who's going to take a chance on an unknown builder trying to sell amps for a couple of grand? So in the end, I started, actually, let's do the basics properly. Let's do the classics. So let's do a really, really good plexi, a really good blackface style amp, and a really good tweed amp. The trifecta of low watt guitar amps. And that's what I did, and variations on a theme like that. And that was just an exercise in growing the brand name and the reputation and everything that goes along with it. But yeah, we did an 18 watt Marshall style amplifier, but we did it with a JTM 45 tone stack rather than tremolo. I just thought that'd be much more useful to players, and it worked great. We did a version of a Princeton Reverb, but we gave it more power, put a bigger speaker in it, hand wired it, did it, all to a much higher standard than the reissues that you could buy at the time. And then the classic Tweed Deluxe, the 5E3 Tweed Deluxe, which is kind of a staple of vintage guitar tone now.
Because
if you get those three amplifiers right, do you? Well, I've kind of evolved it now. We've added spring reverb to it and power switching options, and we do it with 6L6s rather than 6V6s. We put it in a really cool grey tweed TV front cabinet, just to kind of do something a bit different and give it its own look. But people always want those tones, and so you've got to offer them. If they, I get 3 or 4 emails or calls a week saying, "Can you just build me a really, really good Tweed Deluxe?" And you go, "Yes, of course I can." That's your bread and butter, isn't it?
I was looking at your website earlier, and you've still got the Plexi 18, the PR6 1835, and the 50s V, Tweed V.
Yeah.
But you've now got 5 of your own designs.
Yeah. So we got to the point where I felt like I'd kind of reached the ceiling, where I was building everything by myself at that point. I couldn't build anything. I couldn't build any more. I couldn't produce any more per year. I was doing over 100 amps a year on my own. I couldn't, even if people placed more orders, I couldn't build them that quick. So my waiting list had gone from 12 weeks to 18 weeks to 25 weeks to 36 to 50 weeks. And then you're talking a year to get an amp, which is just ridiculous. Yeah. And then, so I was like, well, do I want to just be churning out amps, or do I want to be... It's quality versus quantity, really. And I decided to go down the quality route, and actually let's slim the lineup down, focus on what's really, really important, which for most people is... if you ask any guitar player what's their dream amp, they don't know, because they'll give you a million different answers. It's like a Swiss Army knife of...
Depends on what song you're playing, doesn't it?
Well, this is it. And so then you say, well, this is where the Fender Hot Rod Deluxe comes in, because that's the ultimate function gig amp. That thing will do anything, and it will take any pedal. And what are they, 400 or 500 quid?
Something like that.
Retail price? Absolutely brilliant. And I can't compete with that, so I don't want to. I just want to do things really, really well, to the highest standard that I can. So it meant getting rid of all the fluff around and just focusing on the really good stuff. And then when you start to get crossover, well, that amp's pretty similar to that amp, and that amp does the same as that amp, but it's twice the price. What's going on there? And then you just kind of say, well, actually, no, let's put them all into a nice package. Offer what guitarists really want rather than what I think they want, which is often two very different things. And that's actually a really difficult thing to get right, especially when you're designing an amp, because you naturally go where your ear wants to go, and you have to sit back and say, do you know what? I love it, but our 9 out of 10 guitarists are going to go for that, and sometimes you've got to say no. Yeah. And I know pickup makers go through this a lot. They really struggle to voice a pickup for that's going to suit 99% of the playing population, rather than that one guy who wants something really weird. Even though it's a cool idea, probably not going to sell. Then we started doing the originals line, and just taking the business in that direction, offering guitar amplifiers that... The thing is, you've got to be able to go out and do the red line on a Saturday night. You've got to go and do home noodling practice on a Wednesday evening, and everything in between. Yeah, and are you going to have 3 or 4 amps, or do you want one amp that kind of gets you there in everything? And that's a question that we all have to ask ourselves.
Well, surely the answer is 3 or 4 amps.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'd love to sell Mr. Customer 3 or 4 amps, but I don't think Mrs. Customers will go for that.
No, and that's one of the things that's it's always puzzled me with amp builders, is that I know that Fender did what were they called, Excelsior or something? I don't know, 10 years ago.
They did the Excelsior, and then they did the Vaporizer.
Oh, the Vaporizer.
And then they did the and then they did that the little one that looked like a table radio.
Yeah, because amps are fundamentally in a living room quite ugly. They're not nice furniture, are they?
Not like the old radiograms of the 50s, is it?
And I think that because I've got I've got a couple of amps for playing loud, but I've got a Yamaha THR5 for in the house noodling when everybody else is in the house, sort of thing. And it's actually not unpleasant to look at because it's been designed like an old radio sort of thing. And I can never understand why they have to be big, black, boxy, ugly bits. Well,
that's
furniture.
why tweed amps sell so well, I think, to this day, is because they are girlfriend approved on the aesthetic front. Because they look good on a hardwood floor in the corner. Even if you're not into guitar, that with a 3-tone Strat next to it, that's a good look for anybody, and they still sell.
You want to get in touch with IKEA, mate? You could have one in every photo shoot.
I mean, I'm serious though. I mean, it's most of my customers are male, and they all tell me, that I'm allowed to order one of these because the girlfriend says it's okay or the wife says it's okay.
I know it is difficult.
I can't have it in brown or black. I've got to have it in tweed.
I try doing inclusive stuff, but I've done surveys of the guitar show. Well, I've stood in the guitar show. I don't have to do a survey, but I've stood in the guitar show, done the surveys, and it's 90% male. So ultimately,
it's an interesting demographic. I think it's not very varied.
No.
Do you think there's something in the point? I know you were talking there about you need an amp that'll do, an amount of stuff, and I think that's quite a pragmatic approach. I get that, but do you also think that people probably have one go-to reference point that they say, well, actually, do you know what? So, for argument's sake, if your reference point is Brian May, are you going to find yourself with a Vox? If your reference point is Hank Marvin, are you going to find yourself with something? I'm just thinking is there just a default for most people that actually, first and foremost, that's the sound I like, so therefore I'm going to go in that direction.
Yeah, I've often said guitarists, particularly if we exclude modern guitarists, play high gain and gent and all that stuff. If we talk about your more traditional guitar player, they're very conservative. They want a Strat, a Les Paul, and a Tele, a 335, and they want a tweed amp, a blackface amp, and they want a plexi. That's really that's the voices they want. They want a tube screamer. They want a fuzz. Whatever it is. I don't really know my fuzz is. That's terrible.
Big muff.
What's the round one?
Big muff, probably.
Big
Yeah.
The Arbiter fuzz face thing.
That's
what
it.
you're talking about.
Yeah. And so, if you think about it, that's not a huge selection of tones there.
No.
I mean, that's three amp voices, 4 guitar sounds, and a couple of pedals, modulation on top. But that's what people ask for. I'm not pushing that on them. That's what they ask for. And actually, very rarely do I get someone ring up and say, they want a Hank Marvin Shadows tone or something.
Yeah.
It's always, I want a 59 Super Lead. I want a blackface Fender, or I want a 50s tweed thing. Although, actually, interestingly, this week I'm chatting to a guy. He wants, and actually this is a whole separate conversation. But which is the growth of rockabilly again in this country, but how popular that has become again. But this chap is after. He wants the Brian Setzer tone, which is a blonde Fender bassman with 2x12 cab, and a Gretsch. What is it? A 6120 with the filter trons.
Yeah, I think so. That sounds about right. I'm not that hot on Gretches.
No, I'm not either. But it's something I've noticed is how many inquiries I get now for rockabilly stuff.
Wasn't the Bassman originally 3 speakers?
The original one was a 15. You're thinking the Bandmaster.
Oh, am I?
Yeah. But yeah, those blonde Bassmans, 6G6B circuit, is the holy grail for rockabilly players.
It's bizarre. That was Izzy Stradlin's amp of choice on Appetite for Destruction.
Was it really?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
All I can probably say about the Hank Marvin thing is you've been lucky if you've not had those phone calls. And the only reason I'm going to say that is because I used to work in a music store in Leeds, and we used to get the East Yorkshire Shadows Club in very regularly.
Do they all want the copycat delays?
And they were all using Echoes of the Past at that point in time. They were getting them retrofitted to Alesis units. We offered to sponsor their annual show, which was at the Spa Theatre in Scarborough, because that's where they were based. Nice. The East Yorkshire Shadows Club. And so I went along for this show. It was for 2 days, and we sold quite a lot of strings and bits and pieces over the course of the weekend. And the only downside of the event, and they had a shadow there. They had a not one of the the big 2 or 3, but they had one of the 420 bass players, because the Shadows went through bass players like Spinal Tap went through drummers. And so we had a shadow in the room. We might have even had 2 actually. But so I was there for 2 days, and every member of the Shadows Club got to go on stage and play to a Shadows backing track. So that was 2 days. But the problem
had 48 hours of Apache then?
Well, yeah, but the problem was that nobody had thought about any form of stage monitoring. So the first that these guys heard of the tune was when it bounced back off the back wall. So I got 2 days of Apache slightly out of time. And that's like that moment that Michael Douglas has in Falling Down. When he can't get his Egg McMuffin or whatever it is. And by the end of the weekend, I could have probably beaten a Shadows fan to death with his own Strat.
With his own red Strat.
What's the other one they always do? Is it Sleepwalk?
There's FBI they all want to do. They all want to do Foot Tapper. There's about 4 there's only about 4 or 5, and then you'll get one who actually can play, who then picks something from the depths. But essentially, no, it was 2 days of Apache. It was, but it was just that fact that they were playing to the bounce back off the wall in this big old room in the Spa Theatre in Scarborough. So you're lucky, my friend.
There you go. Yeah, I've had a couple. Like I said, I've had a couple of people wanting, Echo units and things, but
I don't know where they go for those units now. I don't know.
I really get asked to do AC30 clones and things. So Yeah.
To be fair,
Maybe
at
I'm
that point,
lucky.
the Shadow fans were all playing Hot Rod Deluxes. At that point, they'd all.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Just
I mean, genuinely, that is a very good workhorse amplifier. I can't say enough good things about the Hot Rod Deluxe. Every time you go to a wedding, the guitarist is using one, and I think that just speaks volumes for the versatility of the thing. Yeah,
I don't think I've ever played through one.
they're very good. We used to sell
the
boatloads of
recent
them.
one, the Mark IV, is the best of the bunch. It's very, very good.
Well, I was selling loads of them. They were only available in black. There wasn't. But we
You can have it in tweed. Well,
no, it was pre-tweed, so that makes it when I was selling them early 2000s. But they used to rock out the door, and they were £500 then.
Yeah. Anyway, to go back to your question about what were we talking about?
We were talking about your original
About-
amps.
No, we got moved on from that.
No,
It
we
was,
haven't.
We got to Rockabilly.
We got to Rockabilly.
yeah, we got to Rockabilly, and then Ant asked me about an amp for every occasion, or just one that. Does all.
Yes.
Well, my personal opinion on this, which doesn't necessarily line up with Rift, but I'm very much from the camp that you should only have gear that is irresistible to play, and that every time you walk past that guitar, you've got to stop what you're doing and pick it up and play. You know, if you've got a piece of gear sat in the corner of the room that you never want to play and it doesn't inspire you, why have you got it? Get rid of it.
Yeah, move it on.
Stop collecting gear for the sake of it, and just own gear that you can't help but pick up every time you see it. And I've slimmed down my guitar collection with that rule, and I own 3 or 4 guitar pedals now, and that's it. And then I've got 2 amps of my own amps that I play, and that's it. That's all I want to do. I want to play that gear. I don't want to collect stuff anymore.
You know what? That is interesting because that's me as well. I'm that, and I think Jason's going to fall out of the conversation somewhat here. But I'm exactly the same. I've got 3 pedals on the floor, and at some point in my head, I need to buy a wah pedal. But I don't even know if I need to buy a wah pedal. I've just somehow got it in my head that the pedal board's missing something. And I've got a couple of guitars and I've got 1 amp.
I do have a lot of guitars, but I do play them all. I do.
Yeah. But are they irresistible? Can you? Do you have to stop what you're doing and pick it up and play every time you see it?
Well, they're all in a. Can you see? They're all in a double-decker, stand-made thing.
But that's not, by the way, that's not had approval for the rest of the house, though, has it? You're not getting that in the lounge, are you?
No, I'm not getting that in the range, but my wife did say she quite liked it.
Provided it's where it is.
But I mean, I acknowledge there is quite a lot of guitars there, but I do pick one of them up every day. It's just not always the same one every day. I am in a bit of a weird honeymoon period that I've ended up with some that I hadn't really planned to, that have all kind of arrived at the same time. I'm not totally. I blame lockdown for that. But yeah, the weirdest one to pick up and play is the V, though, because you can't comfortably really. You end up playing it at a weird angle. That you know.
Well, you've got to do the classical guitar thing, haven't you? And,
yeah.
And split your legs apart and balance it in a funny
and that's
way.
what I was doing earlier. Yes, I split my legs apart.
Interestingly, I was listening to last week's podcast with Ainsley, because I'm a nosy bugger, and I think you and I, Jason, are on the same page when it comes to Stratocasters.
Yes,
I think, because I mean, there's two points that you brought up, because you've just put a different set of pickups in yours, haven't you?
I put a P90, a single coil-sized P90 in the bridge.
Yeah. Have you got the single coils in the mid?
Yeah. I mean, it still looks exactly like a Strat. Should.
Okay. Yeah.
But the bridge pickup was just so weak, and I think because I'm predominantly a Les Paul or Gibson style player, although I've actually only got 2 Gibsons, the rest are Grecos. and I play on the bridge for all of them. I'm just used to a bit of grunt from the bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on a bit of a Strat journey too, in that I love the look of a Strat, I love the feel of a Strat, I love the necks, I love the bodies, I love the control layout, I love the scale length, I love everything apart from the pickups. I just can't get on with Strat single coil pickups, and I've never worked out why. And so my main Strat has got mini humbuckers in it, Firebird mini humbuckers.
Nice.
Yeah, but I've never ever got on with Strat pickups. But interestingly, Telecaster single coils I absolutely love.
Yeah, see,
so it's got to be something in there. Yeah, go on.
So when Ainsley was saying that he, when I was slagging off Strat bridge pickups, he was saying that he didn't really like Telecaster ones. But I don't know. There's more grunt to a Telecaster bridge pickup because I quite like them. I've got several Tellies.
Yeah,
I've only got several Tellies because I built them all myself. Bought bits, sprayed them in the garden. Made the mistake once of spraying one in the garage. Nearly died from lack of breathing. Vowed never to do that again. But I love Telecaster bridge pickups.
There is a theory that Leo originally intended for the middle pickup of a Strat to be the default position, and that's the one you use all the time,
right.
And then you go back or forth. And there is a Fiesta Red 63 Strat that I've played that 100% backs up that theory, in that is just the most glorious, insane tone on a Strat. And the other positions are, you can take or leave them. But that middle position, it's got everything you want. And actually, the more Strats I try now, and this is what is bringing me back around to Strat pickups, is that middle pickup. And if that middle pickup is right, it's absolutely wonderful. But if it's not, I'm just not interested.
When you said you shouldn't be able to walk past your guitar without wanting to play it. And I've got a Japanese 62 reissue that's a 1986, and I bought it in 93. So I bought it second hand in 93, and that's the one that I just come back to. And what's happened in all that time is there's lots of other Strats and Tellys that have gone through my hands, and now to the point where I've only got that. Because after spending and losing lots of money, I've realised that I'm just going to keep coming back to that guitar. And there's no point fighting it. There's absolutely no point fighting it at all.
And it doesn't have to be a super expensive vintage guitar. It doesn't have to be a high-end custom shop thing. It can be a mid-range thing. But if that guitar speaks to you and you can't do anything else, you've got to put your cup of tea down. You've got to stop yourself in your tracks just to play a lick on that guitar every time you see it. That's the answer. That's the guitar for you.
And if you'd said to me, to look at it, is that your guitar? I would say no, because in my head, my idea is a Strat with a maple neck, and that's got a rosewood board.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
But I've never had a guitar that's played anything like that one, and I will always gravitate to a maple board, always.
And is that the snap? Do you mind if I ask? Is that the snappiness of it, or is it just an aesthetic thing?
It's an aesthetic thing.
Okay.
See, I only like rosewood boards on a Strat for the aesthetic thing of it. It's weird. It's weird, but I'm more than convinced that most of what we hear is with our eyes.
Yeah.
Well, it is a big part of it now, I think. I mean, there are some guitar colours that I've seen that even if it's the best sounding guitar in the world, I'm not gonna be seen dead with it.
Yeah, I mean, my mate Paul, who I share a building with, where my business is, he loves gems. Absolutely loves gems. I mean, he's got several of them, and even if it was the perfect guitar for me, I couldn't play one. They just don't do anything for me. I think they look ridiculous, but he loves them.
I can't get on with the super flat fretboards they've got. I mean, what's the radius on them?
16.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Yeah. It's almost like a classical guitar in how flat it is.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. I can't get on with it. But then again, I prefer 7.25 inch on Telecasters, so I'm completely the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's the only issue. My Strat's got a 7.25, and I don't get up the dusty end very often, but it does kind of frustrate me that it chokes out a little bit. So, and I don't really play solos. I've never really played solos. I don't know how to play solos.
I that's what I did as a young guitarist. I called myself a rhythm guitarist. I focused on rhythm playing, and being part of the drum and bass section of a band, as you might call it, rather than focusing on licks. And it was all of those guitar players that really shaped my own guitar playing. Those really good rhythm players like John Lennon, like Kelly Jones and the Stereophonics, and all those guys who weren't what you might consider to be virtuoso shredders by any stretch of the imagination, but they're still very technical and very good on guitar, especially playing rhythm stuff. But yeah, no, I completely get that.
I mean, when I was a sort of like early teen, mid-teen, I wanted to be Malcolm, not Angus. I wanted to be Izzy, not Slash. I don't know. It's something about actually the rhythm guitarist carries the song. The lead guitarist just whittles over the top of it, and gets the 16 bars of glory in the middle, and then.
If you ever get a chance to see Iron Maiden live, obviously they've got the three guitarists, and just from a guitar's point of view, if you watch what the other two are doing whilst there's a solo going on and the other guy is wailing away, it's incredible what they're doing, and that really makes it. And of course, with three guitarists, they're fighting for all sorts of sonic spaces, but they make it work. And I think it's kind of a masterclass in rhythm guitar when you see what they do. And of course, they're running around stage doing all that stuff. I find it incredible.
I find it incredible that they are probably in their 60s now, I would imagine, given that Iron Maiden started in the mid to late 70s.
Yeah, they must be.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on. Things. I need to ask you, Jason, and Ant, actually. We'll start with Ant, because why not? Tell us about your dream amp, then.
Oh, about my dream amp.
Well, if you rang me up tomorrow and said, I want you to build me this amp, what would it be? Well,
that's interesting, because I'm gonna then take you to what I said earlier on about the player. So if you, I mean. The two sounds for me, and these are wildly different actually, in terms of there's something about the tone that Richards gets now. I don't mean back then, I mean now. There's something about he's got a clean tone now that is just something else. So if you hear some of the stuff in rehearsals and what have you, he's just got this beautiful. There's a bit on Jace, you'll have seen it. You know the 5x5. Thing. There's a bit of them, and they're working out a chord sequence to Mixed Emotions, and there's a tone that Richards has got there that's just absolutely beautiful, and it's clean and it's rich and it's full and it just sounds amazing. So there's something about that kind of tone that is clean and rhythm, and it's a little bit like. That tone that Bryan Adams gets on Run to You on the chord bit in the middle, where he's got that chord riff. It's just something like that, where it's a powerful, clean tone. So there's something there, and then totally off on the other side, which is going to make it virtually impossible for you to build this thing. I want to sound like Steve Rothery, please, but not Steve Rothery necessarily lead Steve Rothery. I want to sound like Steve Rothery, delayed, chorusy, the rhythmy stuff, Steve Rothery, which is obviously that's based around a JC 120, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
So they are two totally different things. So I want to be able to pick up two guitars A telly and something, probably Strat-esque with a some kind of hotter pickup in it, and I want to do those two sounds. So I want that kind of clean Richards, not even the necessarily the classic period, but there's this tone he's got now that's just fantastic.
I think he's playing the old tweed Fenders, isn't he?
He is.
With the
Doesn't he have
speakers.
serial number 3 or something of it? I'm sure
I think
read
so.
that.
Yeah.
If that's the case, who in the world has got 2 and 1 then?
Well, I don't think that, because he's been collecting them. He's got his guitar tech is French. I can't remember his name. But basically, his job when the Stones aren't on tour is to go around the world
Finding amps.
And find these amps, because they're so fragile. But he insists on taking them on the road that they have to have multiple backups of them.
Yeah, but you see, I respect that. And that's the whole Bonamassa thing, isn't it? He's taking these high end gear out so people can hear it being played.
Yeah.
And I absolutely respect that. I can't fault the guy. Yeah, well up for that.
Oh, and it helps that you're a multi-millionaire and can afford to take out your own amp tech on tour with you.
Yeah.
And you can send what's his name? Anyway, you can send him out when you're not on tour to go and find them. They've come to the conclusion that number 1 and number 2 have been destroyed over the years, which is probably likely.
Well, number 1 was probably a sales model that went out on the road to dealers as a demo, probably. And then number 2 was either a backup for that or it was sold. But yeah. But you can't trust those early serial numbers like that anyway. Who knows? Yeah.
I mean, it's the sort of thing, when companies start their invoices at 1001, so it looks like they've had business before the first order that they actually have.
Shh, you're giving away the secrets, Jason.
Jason, I think you might have invoice 1001 from me, so don't. You've done it to both of us now.
Yeah.
I started
Jason.
at 1.
Dream amp, Jason.
Okay, so currently my setup via what's it called, a radial tone bone pedal. So
is that the ABY?
Yeah. So I can have both on at the same time. Is that I've got a Marshall SV20H? Is that what it's called? Part of their new, the little new vintage amps that they're doing. So it's the Super Lead, but it's called the Studio Vintage, I think. Into my Lazy J J20, and the two of them on together gives me, I don't know, the warmth from the Lazy J, but the bite from the Marshall at the same time. And I only did that. I've had many amps, but I'd never bought an ABY pedal. But when I was chatting to Phil X, as you do, over a curry, with you and Mick Taylor, and he gave me a really long explanation about why his rider for the guitar show was a JCM 800 and a Fender Anything. We got him a bass breaker, which he seemed quite happy with, at the same time, and I was kind of intrigued, and for the cost of a pedal to be able to do it, and I bought the radial one because it got the lift switch.
It's got the ground lift and the polarity switch. Yeah.
It's amazing.
I've been doing it for years. In fact, it was seeing Phil X at the Boiler Room in Guildford many moons ago, and I saw him doing it there, doing the whole ABY thing, 2 amps, dual mono, 2 amps on at once, and then he'd have a boost just going to 1 amp, so he could then push it a little bit further as well. It was just because everything sums together, but only the good bits sum together. Yeah, so you never it's because you'd worry that all you'd hear is the bad bits of both amps summed together, but actually no, it's only ever the good bits. And you can find some really complementary amp combinations that just sound incredible. So I've been doing it for years, and that's my main thing, and it's better than a boost pedal, kicking another amp instead.
It's great, isn't it? In fact, I've got the pedal board that Phil used here. That he should probably give away at some point via the podcast. He took a pedal board off me at the show and at the show, and then went, "Can I go on tour with it?" I was like, "Yeah, of course you can. I'll give it you back at the end." So we'll give that away at some point.
Took the piss a little bit, didn't he? What with the extra Naan bread and the the pedal board.
Yeah, well, you know.
It's LA rock stars. They just don't know their place, do they?
They don't. They don't. Wouldn't have in Tamworth that. But But so was that a piece of genuine market research, or is an amp going to appear at my door in about a year?
Well, if you get your credit card out, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
No, I just find it interesting because a lot of people, when you ask them that question, they don't know. They really don't know. They really struggle to think. What would be my dream amp?
It has changed though, depending on which band I've been in.
Well, this is exactly my next follow-up point, because I once built my dream amp, and then a couple of weeks later, it was no longer my dream amp because I was onto something else.
Yeah, I mean, I played in for want of a better description, punk and roll. It wasn't really a shouty punk band. It was kind of like a New York Dolzy kind of rock and roll band. But I was the only guitarist, and I had a dual Terror at the time. And it was brilliant because it just filled that middle sound. But as soon as I started playing, I suppose, Americana type stuff, it just didn't work at all. I couldn't get a light enough sound from it. Yes, you do an Americana amp.
No, that was Adrian Thorpe just driving past. The Major. For those that don't know, our workshops are next door to each other here on the farm.
Have you got the good one, or has he got the good one?
Well, mine's got the indoor toilet. His has got an external toilet, and I've got more windows. So
his is shit then, really.
So that's what Matt Gleason said. He says you can judge your success by how many windows your workshop has.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, and I've got 4 windows here, so I must be doing reasonably well. Well, Adrian's only got 2 windows.
Wow. My office has no windows.
Yeah, my office has got no windows. I've got no windows. That's why when we do these podcasts at night, it just gets darker and darker and darker. And you look exactly the same, and we just get darker.
Yeah,
all the time. No, I must admit, it's interesting what you said there, because actually thinking about it now I've described what I would have liked. That kind of clean sound that could punctuate things like Tom Petty, or could punctuate things like, because I was into the Alarm for a while, but that would also work with the Bryan Adams thing, that works with the Stones thing. I can see how that's consistently gone all the way through, actually, in my kind of, so that bit, I can identify that sound in 6, 8, 10 artists that I like. But the Steve Rothery one is very, I suppose you could say, yeah, it's Rothery and it's Gilmour and it's a couple of others. But I mean, for me, it's Rothery, but that kind of delayed, chorusy, jangly, But interesting.
I did realise that I've actually, if you said to me, who have been your guitar heroes over the years, it's effectively the same person, just in different skin.
Yeah. So that's actually really fair. That's a really fair point.
I think I've got Keith Richards, who's really just Chuck Berry. I've got Johnny Thunders, who's really just Keith Richards. I've got Andy McCoy from Hanoi Rocks, who's really just Johnny Thunders. And I've got Izzy Stradlin, who's really just Andy McCoy. It's just, they're all just Chuck Berry, but in raggedy gypsy clothes.
The one that's out for me in all of that, if I think back to that kind of thing, that doesn't really fit, is Richard Hawley. He's the one that just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And that's a huge tone thing as well. But that takes us a little bit back to rockabilly, doesn't it?
But it's Big Gretches, isn't it?
Big Gretches.
So both of you have mentioned dream amps that achieve tones someone else's sound. Really? But what's your sound?
Mine is
If you weren't trying to chase someone else's guitar tone or trying to achieve someone else's tone, what gear would you play?
I stopped chasing other people's tone. A couple of years ago, the band that I was in sort of like split up is too strong a word, drifted apart, and God, I sound like such a twat now. I recorded a solo album on my own.
You tend to have to.
Yeah, and for the first time ever, I was stood in a recording studio that I was paying for with an engineer / producer going, "How do you want it to sound?" And going, and kind of we went away, and I kind of did him a CD of kind of stuff that I really liked, and we just kind of worked from that. So I think my sound now, over the last probably 4 years, is my sound, and it is that I don't play with any distortion at all really now. I just like to play with a bit of crunch. But I think it works really well for a wide open rhythm guitar part, which is what I play.
I think as a guitar exercise, it's really interesting to do. Is to sit down and say to yourself, "What is my own tone?" You know, one of my customers is a huge Dave Gilmour fan, and all of his gear for years has been Dave Gilmour's gear. You know, all the Pete Cornish pedals set exactly right, all the amps, you know, all the right guitars with the right strings on.
I know
everything.
who you mean.
And recently, he's decided that he wants to do his own sound, and he's gone in a completely different direction to what I ever thought he would. And do you know what? His tone is 10 times better than it was before, and his playing is better. And so it's a really, really interesting exercise to do, is to what actually is my tone, rather than chasing someone else's. Where does that take me?
Do you know what? That also talks to the fact that naturally I can't play very well like the people that I would say are my heroes. So you try to mimic it.
Yeah.
You try to mimic it, but I can't do it. I actually can't do it. I can make a reasonable approximation, but it's only a reasonable approximation. And yet, other stuff, when I'm playing, you know, naturally, and then suddenly when you start to play naturally, you realise that the sound that you've got and what you're going for is not using any of the component parts that your influencers are using. Because it just doesn't work. And I have to say, Chase, I'm a bit with you, that I end up on a light crunch tone, you know, and particularly if I'm messing about trying to write something, end up with something that's a lot different to what I would have said that my influences would be.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that because I've been doing some recording lately, in a different studio, which has been absolutely brilliant. I was recording on Friday, and it's been really interesting to just service the song rather than this is my setup, so this is what I play. You know, I'm fortunate enough that, as you've seen, I've got quite a selection of guitars, so I've gone, actually, this guitar needs a Les Paul. No, this one needs a Telecaster. No, this one needs a Strat. And I don't think you get that when you play live, because, you know, I haven't got a roadie that can, you know, be waiting on the wings to chuck me another guitar and stuff like that. And you just and I also think I've been lucky. No, that's the wrong word. I've never ever played covers. In fact, I can't play anybody else's songs. I can stumble through a couple of Rolling Stones songs, and that's about it. So I've never chased anybody else's tone like that, because I've never had to replicate it.
But isn't it fascinating how many guitarists do, and that's all they do?
Yeah.
You know, what's your ideal guitar sound? Well, I want to sound like Slash. Right, but you're not Slash.
Yeah.
What's your, you know, or you know, going back to the Hank Marvin and the Shadow stuff. You know, those guys, they spend fortunes. You know, a ridiculous amount of money trying to get that tone. And I often think, what does that guitarist actually sound like when he's doing his own thing?
Oh, I can help you with that. I can help you with that, and I can tell you what they don't sound like.
But I never wanted to. Whilst when I was a teenager, I kind of really idolised a lot of rock bands, which is why I started playing the guitar. I wanted to do that. I never wanted to play their songs. If you know what I mean, it just wasn't. No. I don't see the point. I genuinely don't see the point of learning someone else's parts. I'd rather write my own. Which I am fully aware is out of step with how most guitarists learn, and I probably would be a lot better if I'd learned how to play other people's songs and practice them, but it just didn't do anything for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is a difference between learning to play another song convincingly and being being it tonally correct to the nearest millionth of a percent, as some people do, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I just as I said, as an exercise, it's really interesting to discover your own tone and to put everything else aside and almost start again with a blank sheet of paper and say, right.
And I did that with my pedal board as well. I just took everything off and sort of laid them out and was like, am I happy with this one? No. That goes. Am I happy with this one? Yes, it stays. And then I kind of went, what gaps have I got?
Yeah.
And Jen just bought a couple of pedals. Initially, I bought some second-hand ones that are a bit battered off eBay just to see if I kind of like that. Or I remember buying a Behringer delay pedal. I've never played with a delay pedal in my life. Bought a Behringer one for like 25 quid. Okay, I can kind of see the use of that. I think I might need a better version of it. But, so that was kind of like how I built my current pedal board, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done it too many times now. I don't know what my tone is, but I know what I want for my gear, so I guess that's one thing.
It's difficult as well, isn't it? Because you're trying to build amps that sound very different. So therefore...
Yeah. I mean, and that's an interesting thing as well. Lately... we're circling back to my originals line of amplifiers now. They're not trying to sound like a particular amplifier of the past. They're trying to capture a particular sound of an era or a genre or something. For example, I'm really into country music. And Americana. It's a big thing of mine, and I'm looking at some of the modern guitar heroes in country music.
Yeah.
Guys like Brad Paisley, Keith Urban, the guys in the Zac Brown band. And you would think they're all playing Telecasters into Tweed amps, because that's the classic country sound. And actually, do you know what? That they're playing anything but those things. Yet they still get what everyone would consider to be quintessential country guitar sound.
Yeah.
And the more I looked into it, most of them are playing British voiced amps, which completely blew my mind.
What blew my mind a couple of years ago was Laney were telling me that they go out to Nashville quite often. I was like, really? Laney, the sound of heavy metal, is out in Nashville.
But there you go. But you see, but I think I understand that, because a lot of those really heavy metal high gain amps have got a really nice clean tone.
Yeah.
And if that twangs and it chicken picks,
yeah,
guess what? They're going to use it.
Yeah.
Because if the glove fits or the hat fits or whatever the phrase is. But yeah, it was actually, I was on YouTube and I was searching for. So my dream guitar is a 52 gold top, Les Paul gold top.
Okay.
I want an early one with the unbound neck.
Around?
It's got the trapeze, and it's got the neck angle is incorrect, as they say now. But I've always wanted an early 52 gold top. That's anyway, I was searching YouTube for demos of one, and one came up and it was 52 gold top into high watt. That's all the video was called, and I clicked on it, and it was actually the opening song from a live show that Keith Urban did, where he's playing a 52 gold top into a high watt. And that tone was something else. I couldn't believe. I mean, it was kind of a mix between country music and pub rock, which is right up my street. But yeah, it was, and I couldn't believe it. I thought, that's not a Telecaster into a Tweed Bassman. That is a Les Paul. All right, it's P90s, but it's a Les Paul into a high wall, which is, I wouldn't have guessed in a million years that would be used in country music.
No.
But yeah, so
saying
anyway,
that, it's interesting with the names that you've kicked out there, because I've always had a little bit of a kind of a view that pop, to a certain extent, there's always been a guitar-based version of pop, and depending on the era, will depend on what it then gets defined as. So if you go back to what the guitar-based version of pop was in the mid-70s, actually we now call that glam to a certain extent. And if you look at what the guitar-based version of pop was in, say, the early 80s, we now call that hair rock, or we call it soft metal. And then you've got the Britpop being, a genre, when in reality all these were just good pop songs. And it was just that was the guitar sheen that was on them at the time. Does that, So if you listen to, I guess the great example is that Mutt Lange goes from producing Def Leppard to producing Bryan Adams to producing Shania Twain. The material's actually virtually the same. There's not a lot between...
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah.
What's on Hysteria to what's on Waking Up the Neighbours to what's on whatever the name of that Shania Twain album was that went stratospheric. The guitar works similar across the board, maybe a little bit more whittle on the Leopard stuff, but the point being, it's a different wrapper for essentially what is the guitar-based pop of the day. And as I say, pick your genre, pick your era, and then we name it something different. So it's glam, or it's metal, or it's soft metal, or it's metal, or it's rock, or it's country, or it's... But because I'm with you, if you listen to a lot of that, the kind of country stuff that's floating through at the moment, it's not really country, is it? It would have been 20 years ago, 20 or 30 years ago, it would have been Bryan Adams.
It would have been Bon Jovi.
Or Bon Jovi,
yeah.
or
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an interesting point, because, I mean, there's... Country music is huge and is so diverse, and there's lots of different subgenres in it. But Nashville, on the pop side of it, has always been a couple of years behind what modern pop trends are.
Yeah.
So it's a southern cover act, as someone once called it. But no, I think you're right. It does. It's but with those guitar players, from a gear point of view. Because of course Brad Paisley plays he's playing Dr. Z, Z-Rex, which are based on, which was a train wreck design, which is based on a hot rodded Vox. So that's your link back to a British amp again. And then the more you see it, they're all playing British voiced amps, and I just found that whole thing fascinating. That it's you can get, if you're a good enough player, you'll get the tone out of anything.
My favourite tone out of that modern country thing is Jason Isbell.
Yes, yeah,
he's just. I know he's obsessive about tone, but it just his latest album is incredibly stratty, but sounds great. And his previous work was quite Les Paul-y. Is it Magnatone he plays? I think. But I get the impression that he'll play whatever suits the song, really.
Although interestingly, Chris Stapleton is one of the new breakout guys, but he's playing Fenders again. So maybe it's gone full circle.
Well, it's the murky world of endorsement deals, though, isn't it?
No, I didn't want to get into it, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what are they actually playing in the studio compared to? And what are they actually playing on stage? I mean, the amount of times that you've been and seen a band and they've got a, back line of something, and you hear that there are other amps actually behind the stage, under the stage, that are actually being used. It's,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, I suppose an hour and 20 minutes in,
we've only had 3 questions from Jason.
yeah, we perhaps ought to think about wrapping this up. So
I hadn't asked about motorsport, which is the reason why we couldn't get you on before.
I was away racing. Yeah.
But
yes,
we'll come back to that on another day. Eh?
Well, I think we're going to have to do this. I think we're going to have to put a part 2 in for this because we haven't really touched on probably half of what we were going to touch on.
Oh, I've got a page full of questions.
Well, let's have one more question, Jace. Come on,
make it a winner, Jace.
Make it a winner. No,
come on, one off the top.
I do want to talk about your motorsport because it fills your Facebook pages and the live feed from the car.
Yeah, so last year, a friend and I bought a race car, decided to get our licences and join a racing club, the 750 Motor Club in this instance, and try a hand at motorsport. And it is, if you think guitar stuff is expensive, you are in for a big shock when it comes to motorsport. Because even the cheapest motorsport, and they advertise it as budget racing, can get eye-wateringly expensive if you want to be even mildly competitive. But I absolutely love it, and it allows me to step away from thinking about valve amplifiers all day long, and focus my energy on something else.
So it's MX5s, isn't it?
So we bought an MX5. When you decide you want to go racing, you have to, the first decision that you make is whether you want to race front wheel drive or rear wheel drive cars, and that then puts you on into which series you're going to race in, what car you're going to buy, and all those type of things. And my friend Nick and myself, we decided we wanted to do rear wheel drive. And then from that, you've got a choice of a Mazda MX-5, a BMW compact, Caterhams, and stuff like that. But if you want to not remortgage your house, it's got to be a Mazda MX-5 because you can buy a race prepped car for around $5,000. Your total license cost, including the gear you got to wear, you could do it for about $1,000, and then budget for about $6,000 a year to go racing as a minimum. So it is expensive, but then again, I've spent more than that in a year on guitar gear, so who knows?
It is great fun though, isn't it? The first event I ever ran was an event called Mini World, which wasn't about really small worlds. It was about the Mini, and it's a really confusing title. But it was about the old Mini, the 60s Mini. And it was brilliant.
We raced against one recently at Silverstone. I mean, I don't understand how they corner. I honestly don't, because they're on these small 12-inch wheels, and they've literally got no floor footprint. They're so small. And this guy was 4-wheel drifting it around and all sorts. He was having a great time. Yeah.
One of the sort of things that I did as part of the event, I started. So I ran this thing at the NEC, and it had it was binary. That's how I remember it. 11,010 visitors for the first year, which was pretty good. And so I spent the next year sort of like gearing up to the next event, and you just go to lots of other sort of like little mini meets and mini racetracks. And I went to see the Mighty Minis race series several times. Went down to Brands Hatch to see him, and at Silverstone and stuff like that. I had a brilliant time, and I went to Santa Pod Raceway, which is drag strip. It's not far from you, is it? It's in North.
No, it's half an hour drive. Yeah.
And do you know Dave Walsh that runs Eternal Guitars?
I briefly met him.
Well,
you know what it's like at a guitar show.
Yeah,
you meet everyone.
Well, Dave used to be the ad salesman for Mini World magazine.
Right.
20 years ago, sort of thing. From 25 years ago, probably. And Mini World magazine were sponsoring this event at Santa Pod Raceway, and they got a couple of their own Mighty Mini race cars there because they were sponsoring a series, and they kept saying to me, "Go down the track." And I hadn't got my driving licence with me, and you needed a driving licence to be able to do it. So I borrowed Dave Walsh's, learned how to forge his signature, sort of like for the 20 minutes before while I was stood in the queue, and raced twice down the drag strip. It was brilliant fun.
Oh, I mean, it's beyond. I mean, if you've ever been go-karting, to a go-kart track and a race, it's that amplified, by 10 easy. The adrenaline rush and everything that goes with it. It's one of my absolute favourite things to do. Is just go hurtle around a Formula One spec track in a race car. And the thing is, track days are fun, but nothing beats going 3 wide round a corner in competition. It's absolutely brilliant. I love it.
I'd love to do
so
it.
We've got. This year's kind of ruined us a little bit, but we've got. I'm going to Snetterton which is out north in Norfolk in a couple of weeks' time, and then the week after we're back at Silverstone for a race called the Burkitt Relay, which is a 6-hour relay race.
Cool.
So we've got a team of 3 cars, 5 drivers, and you just how many laps you can do in 6 hours. One car goes out, does his laps, comes in, next car goes out, rinse
It's
and
like
repeat.
a mini Le Mans.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's the traditional end of the club season, and they do it every year. But you can't be a novice. You've got to have completed 6 races in order to enter. And some of our drivers aren't quite there yet, so we're trying to get extra races in to get them up to get in. But that's been the dream for a long time. So yeah, we're looking to that, and then we've got Donington Park. And then I might be racing on Boxing Day at Mallory Park.
I like Mallory Park.
Yeah, I think it's a motorcycle
It is really
venue.
Yeah.
But they hold every year on Boxing Day. They hold a race meeting there, and it's a great way to spend your Boxing Day. If you want to escape the in-laws. Yeah.
Cool.
So there you go. Yeah, and so I sponsor the car myself because free advertising.
It's a quarter. It's a 45-degree sawn car.
It certainly is. Yeah. Right.
Well, on that, I think we'll
yeah.
call it a day. Chris, thanks for your time.
That's all right. I enjoyed it. A nice chat.
Oh, it's good to see you, mate.
Yeah, I do waffle on a lot. I do apologise, but
No,
That's all right. That's what the edit function's for when
Yeah.
Ant gets to it.
oh, I see. Yeah.
honestly, the 4 people who listen to this will be okay with it. Honestly, it's fine. I'll ring them all beforehand and warn them. I tend to ring.
Just send out a disclaimer.
You know
Yeah.
what? I was checking the chartable things today, and we've just fallen out of the Netherlands top 50 podcasts.
Outrageous, mate.
And I was like, why are we in the top 50 podcasts in the Netherlands?
You see, that's the real question, isn't it? How did you get in there in the first place?
Yeah. Who have I bribed? How much has this cost me?
Although, do you know what's really, really interesting? I've started selling an absolute ton of amplifiers to Scandinavian countries. And I thought all they did was death metal. But apparently vintage amps are all the rage over there. So who knows what's going on.
Well, what's your Icelandic ant? Did we get to
Well,
it?
yeah, we never got to that, did we? Because we did. I'd like to say we were well prepared and we'd done our homework, but we had found out. And to be fair, it's Chris that's reminded of this. What Icelandic was for the big cheese, and it's Stora Ostin. That's the big cheese in Icelandic.
Stora Austin.
So
The thing is, I can't do an Icelandic accent, so it probably sounds like a really bad British accent trying to say the big cheese in Icelandic.
I think. Do you know what?
So anyone who is from Iceland listening to this,
Yeah.
Jason and I are really, really sorry. In the way we've just tried to say
But
the big cheese.
we do love Iceland.
we're really sorry, full stop.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Say it one more time. I want to get the pronunciation right.
Okay, well, I'm still going off what it says on here, but Stora Austin.
See, I can't roll my R, so I don't think I could ever do it properly.
Well,
Okay.
I don't know if I can. I think it's just the fact I said it first that probably makes you think that's how you're supposed to say it. I don't know if I've got it right.
I see. I blame the teacher.
Well, don't worry. When you get to Reykjavik, they all speak English better than we do. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So there we are. On Big Cheese and Icelandic, we will finish for this episode. As I say, thanks, Christoph.
Oh, Jason, you've got to send me an invoice for the naan bread before you forget.
Yeah, let's get that sorted as well. And hopefully we can come and see you soon. Hopefully we can pop along and
come down the workshop. You can see the mess in person.
Indeed. That sounds fab. Jace, I guess I'll speak to you very soon. Do we know who we've got on next, or is it a bit of a mystery?
It's a mystery to me. I haven't actually sorted it out yet. So
right. Does that mean we should get Toya on?
It's a mystery.
Yeah. Sorry. We could get our other half on.
Even Robert Fripp.
Yeah.
I might email Keith Scott.
We need to get Keith Scott on. Chris, do you know Keith Scott?
I know Scott Keith. Does that help?
No.
Well, not really. No.
Not unless we can interview him.
Well, there you go then. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Right. Keith Scott then, Jace. I'll leave it with you.
All right, mate.
Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for your continued support. Obviously, please share it about and tell people if you're enjoying it. And we will speak to you all very soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to 9 to 42, the podcast from the team at the Guitar Show UK. If you've enjoyed the show, then please remember to hit the subscribe button and share with other like-minded souls. For more information about 9 to 42, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram at the Guitar Show UK. This has been an A Short Stories production.